My name is Jack McCabe, and I am the CEO of McCabe Research and Consulting. I'd like to welcome you all to the Real Deals Broward Development Seminar. We have a tremendous panel with us today. While they're all South Florida based, they all have international reputations. And let me start by a little bit about what our panel's about. We've seen a lot of investors and developers that are now looking north of Miami towards Broward County. With the Miami-Dade pre-construction market now showing some signs of possibly leveling off, Broward seems to be stepping up. The current building boom cycle has an impressive 80 new condominiums announced in Broward County out of the 343 in the Tri-County area. That equates to 8,562 units in the work in Broward County, a nearly 20% share of South Florida's pre-construction condos. The reason for the uptick, well, I think we're all pretty familiar with it. First off, Miami has become extremely expensive. We have some building sites still available along the waterways in Broward, and we're seeing a lot of activity. And where Broward, I think, appeals more towards the northeastern United States and to northeastern Canada, Miami seems to be somewhat dominated by Latin American buyers in Eastern Europe and even Russia. So I'm going to start off first off by announcing our panel. Brad is the owner of Premier Developers, REVA, in Fort Lauderdale. Brad is a fourth-generation builder and a very successful family of builders. They've completed more than 2,000 homes in Florida. Some of their best-known developments include Bellaria in Palm Beach, the Renaissance in Hollywood, and La Rive on the Intercoastal in Fort Lauderdale. He is currently working on Rive Fort Lauderdale, a 15-story residential tower. Michael Hammond is Senior Vice President of Related Group. Mike is returning to Related as Senior Vice President. He's responsible for executing the residential development, redevelopment, and marketing strategies for the company. Scott Leventhal is co-founder of the Trillis Companies. Scott has spent nearly 2 decades in the real estate development business and has created a portfolio of mixed-use and multifamily housing projects in the southeastern United States. He is the developer behind the massive 65-acre mixed-unit development Metropica in Sunrise. Next to Brad is one of the top architects in the world. This is Kobe Karp. He's principal of Kobe Karp Architecture. Kobe's one of South Florida's most prolific architects. He founded his full-service architectural and interior design firm in 1996. The firm designs everything from large-scale high-rise condominium and hospitality projects to small-scale, low-rise residential projects, as well as commercial developments. Kobe is the architect on the proposed new Four Seasons condo hotel in Fort Lauderdale. Down at the end is Carolyn Block-Ellert. Carolyn is the founder of Premier Realties, Premier Sales Associates, Premier Sales Group, I apologize. One of the top condominium sales group representatives in South Florida. Carolyn co-founded Premier Sales Group, and they specialize in representing luxury condos, condo hotels, and condo conversions. She is chair of the Broward Master Brokers Forum, an invitation-only group comprised of South Florida's most prestigious brokers. If you would, please give a round of applause to our panel. Awesome. Okay. In the past, Broward has sometimes been seen as the middle child between Miami-Dade and Palm Beach counties when it comes to development. Over the past year, the county has seen a marked increase in both residential and commercial development. I've got a list of questions that I'm going to ask, but first, let me start with Brad. What do you see going on in Broward County right now? Where do you think we are in this current building boom, and does it have legs to stand for a few more years?
It's a couple different questions. First of all, I don't like to call it, and I don't think it is a building boom. What we're seeing in Broward County is just a tremendous growth and it's been a gradual growth that's been brewing, and it's come through, and over the last 15, 20 years, there's been a great change in Broward County in general, and in Fort Lauderdale and East Broward in particular, that while in the last decade there was a stagnation that stifled it, the growth in Broward, what you're seeing now, is not just a function of real estate or just a function of tourism, as it traditionally had been in the past, and as you said, the stepchild between Miami and Palm Beach that Broward has always seen. Today, Fort Lauderdale in particular, and Broward County as a whole, have come into their own. It's become an attractive destination for young professionals, for what's known as the creative class. It's become, there's more and more tech companies, more industries beyond the real estate and tourism that were always, and real estate and tourism, there's a third, and marine, that were all that the county had. Today, I just saw, for the first time, we were named one of the top 50 tech cities and ranked ahead of Miami as cities for tech companies. So it's not that a building boom is happening in Fort Lauderdale. It's that Fort Lauderdale's changing. It's an entirely different place to live. And the real estate market, the development, the luxury developers, the rental developers are discovering it and are just catching up to what's happening here.
Great. Scott, what's your take on the market right now? Are we in a boom, or are we just in a period of sustained growth you expect to keep up for a period of years?
Well, I think it's almost a little more analogous to say that instead of being the stepchild of Palm and Dade County, that Broward's really the middle, just like a building that usually sells from the top and bottom right into the middle. We have really no room to grow in South Florida other than in Broward County. And over the last several years, we've seen tremendous infrastructure improvements between improvements to Interstate 595, expansion of the Fort Lauderdale Airport, and more corporate relocations that are considering their home in Broward County. I think that housing is going to continue to follow the infrastructure, and as the South Florida region has continued to be a very strained area in terms of infrastructure, the natural evolution is for people from Miami to make their way north, and Broward is an ideal destination.
Mike, Related Group has probably been the #1 builder of multifamily down here in South Florida, but generally has focused more on Miami-Dade County in years past. Now the company seems to be doing a lot of projects in Broward County. Why are you guys building them in Broward as opposed to just in Dade?
I believe, that statement you said is true as it relates to condominiums, but on the rental side, if you go back over the last 20 years, Related has probably built more rental units in Broward County than they have in Miami-Dade County. And there's reasons for that. The availability of land and the cost of land has always been less expensive in Broward County. And we continue to be very active in Broward County in the rental market, even more so than in Miami-Dade County. I do think you're going to see a surge on our part of doing more condominiums in Broward County. We have several in the planning stages. We recently just finished a building down in Hallandale that is closing now. It was completely sold out, and we just launched another deal down in Hollywood that's doing very well in the reservations. Up in Fort Lauderdale, we're starting to launch several jobs, and we feel very good about the market. One of the things that we looked at is we went back to the previous cycle, and when we compared what condos were selling oceanfront in Fort Lauderdale versus Miami Beach and Sunny Isles, the difference was 10 or 20%. Today, that difference is 100%. Units in Sunny Isles and Miami Beach are selling for twice what they're selling up here. So we feel there's a gap there, and that gap is going to close. So, this would be, if I was going to buy a condo, this would be the time I'd buy one in Broward County, just because we think the values are going to go up, and that gap is going to narrow between Miami-Dade and Broward.
Great, thank you. Kobe, is there a difference in designing buildings for Fort Lauderdale than there is for Miami?
That's a good question. I think we can all agree that Fort Lauderdale has unique districts and destinations to it. And so does Broward County, which are unique and different than Miami. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and when I came to Florida, most people from the Midwest would rather go to Broward County. Specifically, though, Fort Lauderdale has really matured very nice. You can go to the river and see the districts which have been created and are being created. And the design is an important element. The architecture of whether it's related or whether it's what Aussie Symbol is doing on the river and other people, it's very unique. And when you go along the river, which is a very public kind of a promenade and district, it relates also very well from an urban planning to, for example, how the beach is. Where the Elbow Room and all those places used to be when I came here for spring break, we're building, you know, the Conrads of the world and a Burj and Four Seasons. But what's interesting is all of those places are really unique destinations that create a public space and a public realm along the beach, along the river, in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and actually in other locations in Fort Lauderdale. For example, if you look at the districts which are being created, even by Sawgrass, what Metropica is creating, or when you look at places in Hollywood that have been created, where they take the existing fabric of the architecture and the buildings and create neighborhoods and communities, because most folks who live in Hollywood don't necessarily go to Hallandale. People who live in Fort Lauderdale in the historic homes don't necessarily go to where I like to hang out, Lauderdale by the sea, by the pier. Everybody goes to their own different districts and neighborhoods. And observing that in Broward County, it's really coming to a very mature, cultured destination. The people of, you know, if just the arts and the culture that you have in Fort Lauderdale and Broward County, Manners community compared to the river, compared to downtown, you have a lot of opportunities in various locations to live and to work. And I think that really makes the design opportunities greater, if you will, in Fort Lauderdale, and also different, mostly different than they would be in Miami.
Thank you. Carolyn, you're in the front lines. You're dealing with the buyers. What are the differences in buyers in Broward County compared to Miami-Dade and Palm Beach? And would you say Broward's more in line with Miami or more in line with Palm Beach?
Neither. I would start with Broward is really its own unique market, although we do have crossover, probably much more this year and the tail end of 2014. A large part of that is due to what Mike had mentioned. We talk about price point. It does cost not half, but 3 times less to live in Broward County, and that's everything from property values and taxes. So all of those are huge, huge factors. But the buyers are very different, and I think what buyers are looking for, and we talk about Broward County as a whole, but there are so many unique parts of Broward County. We're focused on the big boom that's going on in Fort Lauderdale. Those buyers are truly, it used to be that Fort Lauderdale was the jeans and sneakers town, which was your billionaires are walking around in khakis and loafers and coming off their boats, and you wouldn't know one from the next. And I think the upscale buyer is emerging as a result of what opportunities are available to purchase, both in livability and in serviceability when we look at all of the global brands that are arriving.
Okay, thank you. The land costs we know are considerably less in Broward County, both historically and currently. The lifestyle and the demographics are also now changing in Broward County as well. We're seeing tremendous population migration to the area right now. I'm expecting 200 to 275,000 population gains in Florida per year. We're going to see a large portion of that down here in South Florida. That should go on for the next 15 or 20 years, provided no recessions, and of course, hopefully we'll continue to evade the hurricanes. But how are the lifestyle and demographics in Broward County changing, and how does that affect your building?
I'm not sure that it's changing as much as you just said, as much as more and more people are realizing what it's like in Fort Lauderdale and in Broward County. Fort Lauderdale has everything that's attractive about Miami. Fort Lauderdale has, but just a little less. It's a much more livable lifestyle. It's a much better scale. And for people who don't need the status of saying Miami. Fort Lauderdale is where they wind up moving to. The bigger impact that I see is not who's coming to Fort Lauderdale, although that's important. We're seeing more Latin American buyers. We're starting to see, while that might be lessening down in Miami, it's because there are fewer Latin American buyers and a higher percentage of them are looking in Fort Lauderdale and in Broward County. But you're also seeing, on a micro level, a migration back to East Fort Lauderdale. What happened a generation ago of the move out to Weston and the move to the suburbs, which was really spurred, it's always existed, has been undone. Young families are growing up in Fort Lauderdale and staying in Fort Lauderdale. And from the Tri-County area, younger people are moving to Fort Lauderdale and staying there. There's a whole lot of stats that do it, but for me, it's the anecdotal data of baby stroller indexes, our city manager loves to call it. And we see more and more young families in Flagler Village, along the waterways, even on the beach. That is really the heart of what is Fort Lauderdale. And that's keeping property values up, and that's what is making it a more attractive place for the people who are discovering it now.